Hey, this is Grant Brissett. Well, the week after Easter, let's talk about the resurrection, specifically alternate theories. So if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, what's some other alternate theories that try to explain what happened to the fact that Jesus lived, was buried, the tomb was found empty, and the disciples believed he rose from the dead and were willing to suffer and die for that faith, and others like Paul and the skeptic James converted to believe in Christianity? How do we explain those historically verifiable facts? Well, one theory is called the Swoon Theory. Swoon Theory says that Jesus passed out on the cross or just acted like he passed out. They took him off the cross, buried him, he escaped and started Christianity. Well, is that a credible explanation or alternate theory that explains the facts? I would say no, and most scholars and many scholars would say no. So first of all, Dr. Gary Habermas says you only have to know one thing to know whether Jesus died on the cross, and that's whether he got on the cross. If Jesus got on the cross, the Romans were expert executioners, number one. Number two, they were under death threat themselves if they failed. A U.S. Marshal doesn't let their convicted felon go very easily, especially if they're going to be punished with death. Dr. Gary Habermas also talks about the fact that on the cross there is movement to breathe. So if your arms are outstretched or tied up the way that crucifixion was carried out by the Romans, you had to move to take in a breath and exhale. So there was movement on the cross very obviously to breathe. If you faked passing out, you asphyxiated and died. If you passed out because you lost too much blood, you asphyxiated and died. So I'm a big skeptic when it comes to believing that Jesus got off the cross. But let's just go with that. Let's say Jesus somehow did not die, was placed in the tomb. At that point, you've got to convince me or be convinced that Jesus could actually stand up after the crucifixion, after the beating with the cat of nine tails, after the dehydration, the beating, the thorns shoved in his skulls, and dehydration from the trials that whole night. He couldn't carry his cross fully. He passed out on the ground and gave out, and someone else had to carry it. So according to the Swoon Theory, Jesus didn't die. He's placed in the tomb. Now, think about it. He's got to support himself on his nail-pierced feet. He's got to move the big stone. He's got to evade the Roman soldiers. He's got to walk the path, find the disciples, evade being seen by anyone, and then he gets to the upper room. He sees the disciples. Remember, this is the Swoon Theory that he did not die. He made it through all of this. He's alive. He gets to the upper room. If you're the disciple and you look at him, do you now believe he conquered death, rose from the dead? Are you willing to suffer and die for that belief? I find a hard time believing that. And how is the Apostle Paul going to believe that? How is the skeptic James going to believe that? The Swoon Theory does not explain the facts as well as a resurrection. The main reason people reject the resurrection is they refuse to believe in miracles. The choice is yours. You have the free will. Look at the facts. The idea that explains the facts the best is that Jesus rose from the dead. You decide. Well, this has been Grant Brissett. I hope this helps you as you try to think out and look at the alternate theories of the resurrection.